Okay, so welcome all of you. I'm happy to see you all. And to start the pre-event related to the DigiEduHack. DigiEduHack is a global hackathon where people up to 9 November can upload their solutions and join. So we are expecting people to submit their solutions up to 9 of November. And by 9th of November, we are going to run something like roundtable to discuss the presented solutions and to discuss what solutions people are offering to solve crucial situations in education. And I would leave the floor to my colleague, Anastasia, so she can introduce everyone and she can welcome all of you. So Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to welcome all of you here. And I would like to introduce our team, first of all. Marva, Savanj, say hi, Premla, the strong ladies who pull it up together, and our dear speakers for joining us today. So let's start with the first speaker, which is Margos Podasta, Professor of Educational Technology, the head of Pedagogicum and Tartu University of Estonia, based in Estonia. So we would like him to introduce briefly the Center of Educational Technology, which he's head of, and the Masters of Educational Technology. And he also would be talking to us about the importance of collaboration with educational technologists. Who are they and why it is important to work together to solve these issues that we haven't had. Margos, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this event. And I hope that you hear something new, because many of you already have heard me several times in different meetings and during the master studies as well. But perhaps some are new to me as well. And definitely I know that you will share the recording publicly in social media, so that probably it will catch an eye of some other people as well. So the Center for Education and Technology at the University of Tartu was established officially in February 2014. Also, actually, we started already a bit earlier in 2012 with several projects with a smaller team. And initially, this center consisted of 7 people, and we were and we still are very much a project-based team, so that we focus on different projects and try to do something good with all those projects. And at the beginning of the center, we had 3 main projects. 2 very large international projects on developing web-based learning environments with partners from more than 10 different countries. These were called GoLab project and Arc of Inquiry project, and the latter was coordinated by us. In addition, we had 1 Estonian project to study how to ensure sustainability of IT education in Estonia. At that time, at least, it was so that about 1/3 of IT students in bachelor studies dropped out of the studies during the first study year. And in this project, we collaborated very much with different partners from Estonia as well, the Institute of Computer Science in our university, but also at Tallinn Technical University, IT College, ITL, which is Estonian Association of Information Technology and Telecommunications, and in the end, we actually found that we have already a lot of experience based on the projects, and both at the national and international collaboration. But we didn't have students to ensure sustainability of EdTech community, and I am so happy that now we have the community. We have already many students, some graduates as well, who are willing to keep alive this EdTech community beyond the master studies as well. And then we started to develop education technology master's program. Our aim was to share our own knowledge and experience, but also to let students from different countries and with different backgrounds to share their experience with each other. And we also saw that we at the University of Tartu could be the learners of the students, so that we really hoped to get new ideas from all the students coming from many different countries all over the world, from different continents. However, of course, an additional aim was always to build networks between educators and EdTech companies. And therefore, I am super happy that Marva, Anastasia, Primla, Sevins, and others have established the EdTech Tartu community that connects our master program students and graduates from different years, but also connects them with EdTech companies. As I was asked, my role is today first to introduce shortly our center. Today we are still very much focusing on different national and international research and development projects. Our research and development activities in education and technology address the impact of technology on learning and social interactions, with the aim of providing teachers, researchers, and policymakers with solutions to improve teaching and learning practices. So that we are mainly focusing on the pedagogy, how to use technology. We are not developing technology, at least from the technical point of view. Therefore, we need good partners with whom to develop something together. And it has been so for a long time. And I can also later share some good experience with different partners. So our main role has been, and I believe it will be in the future as well, is to investigate a range of areas such as digital competence or computer-supported inquiry-based learning, learning analytics, educational data mining, virtual reality, computational thinking, innovative education technologies, video-supported learning, and online blended learning instruction. And our work is quite interdisciplinary. For example, one of our projects, which is called DigiEduHack, we study how learning in digital environments affects academic outcomes in a range of subjects, such as science, mathematics, and language, as well as studying how digital learning affects factors such as learning skills, agency, social emotional skills, and self-regulation skills. I will come back later to self-regulation skills again and again, because I really believe that the goals we have nowadays should be more set towards 21st century skills, which are more general skills than traditional science competence, mathematics competence, or language competence. Of course, these are tools that could be applied in different contexts in solving different problems. In some of the projects we have, we are also collaborating with EdTech companies to find better ways to support learning. For example, we all know that in online learning settings, self-regulation is often extremely important, especially in case of MOOCs, massive open online courses. Of course, in case of our EdTech master's program, we do not have that kind of approach, because we have face-to-face or cam-to-cam communication, and this is much more useful to support motivation and emotion regulation in those kind of settings. But in MOOCs, it has been a challenge for a long time. And in our studies, we have found that in online learning settings, some important areas of self-regulation, for example, emotional regulation, has been not supported enough. So that this is the challenge for the future. If we develop new solutions to learn online, and we have to learn how to collect information about self-regulation and its different areas, and then how to use this information to make it visible for the learner, so that the learner can take it into account in designing his own his or her own learning process, and then adapt it to the needs, to the personal needs. And therefore, we are happy that that we got a chance to start the project with a Lithuanian EdTech startup, Degree, develop and technology for creating new generation interactive online courses. We have developed theory-based ideas to augment their online learning platform with tools to collect information about self-regulated learning in its cognitive, metacognitive, motivational, and emotional areas. And this data is used to adapt the learning process to students' needs to ensure better learning outcomes and decrease in dropout that has been usually very high in the case of self-directed online learning settings. And currently, this system is tested. The first test started just a bit more than a week ago. And many learners are studying in the improved system for online learning in the context of a web-based development course. But in addition, we are doing really great in implementing our educational technology master's program, I should say, so that our master's program has been running now for 5 years. In the first 2 years, we had 10 to 11 students, then this year have started already 31 students. At the beginning, I was the program director of the master's program, but this wonderful increase in the number of students is of course very much thanks to Emanuela Bardone. Yes, it is. Of course, we are a team always, and it's I believe thanks to our students, our graduates as well, who have really disseminated the word about what we are doing, and this is really important to all of us because it strengthens the community we have. And however, even more valuable than the higher number of students is the students' positive effect on education in the world. And as many of you know, several graduates of the program have continued their studies in doctoral programs in educational science in Estonia or abroad, or they apply their competence in public or private sector, and that was the purpose of this program as well. In our center, we have today 12 staff members, including myself as a professor, but in addition we have 3 associated professors. Emanuela is one of them, and our team is ever changing as we start with new projects and then finish with some of them, so that it's very as I said, our team is very much relying on different projects, and so sometimes we need many more new people in our team, and definitely keep your eyes open. Sometimes you could be also a team member if you are not yet. So you're welcome to collaborate. Then I was asked another question, so that why the collaboration with education technologists is needed for optimizing educational solutions, and why to collaborate. That's a really easy question, actually, I would say. For all of you, you already know that we can do more good in collaboration, and we don't have to go in depth in everything on our own if we have good peers with whom to collaborate. If to bring together people with different competences, different strengths, it will always give benefits to solve different problems. So that it's of course needed for optimizing educational solutions. And there is a very, very big need for that, I would say. So I will give an example with what I am struggling for more than a year at least now. I don't remember exactly when, but quite recently, maybe a year ago, Helsingin Sanomat, one of the leading Finnish newspapers, reported that the more technology is used for learning, the worse are the students' math results in the PISA study. And I don't know what does it tell to you, but I can explain what it shows to me. And this is exactly the reason why let's say educational technologists and collaboration between educational technology people and the people developing technology is very much needed. I see that there is on the market too much pointless technology for learning, or the other explanation might be that the teachers cannot teach using technology, or the students cannot learn using technology. Something should be wrong, and perhaps all of those three criteria should be assessed in order to understand where and when one or other or all of them need to be taken into account in order to make some improvements. But I just cannot believe, based on many studies, that technology does something very bad in education if it is applied meaningfully, if goals are set clearly, and then technology is adapted according to the goals, not vice versa. Not so that we have technology, we start using it, and then we hope that something happens. Nothing happens. I already mentioned our project with the Lithuanian bit degree company. Our aim was to change the fact that only 5% of people starting MOOCs finish them in an average. And in our understanding, the learning competence is needed to change that. Even more, competence of self-regulated learning is needed in that kind of situations. And now when many of us have to adapt to distance education from young age, actually, so that we need to learn how to learn on our own, how to regulate our own learning process. It means that in all phases of learning, we usually differentiate three phases: preparatory phase, before learning, performance development phase, the actual learning phase, and the appraisal phase, which is for looking back, for reflecting the learning process, to learn about the process as well, not only about the content. And in all those three phases, we have to pay attention on 4 different areas of self-regulation: regulation of cognitive processes, regulation of metacognitive processes, motivational processes, and emotional aspects of learning. However, too often this is not taken into account in the learning process. In our literature review, where Emanuela was also involved, we found that in some phases, one or other area gets more attention. Of course, the most focus has been set on cognitive processes, but the least attention has been set on emotional processes. And as we see now during the COVID-19 pandemic as well, the emotional processes in the context of learning become more and more important, so that we have to take it into account in development, the learning tools and methodologies for applying the tools available. So in addition, educators should have knowledge how to support study motivation or avoid negative distracting emotions. But what we have seen based on the literature review, that online learning environments usually even do not collect the information about these aspects. And do not allow taking actions to increase motivation or support positive emotions in different phases of the learning process. So of course, sometimes I should say that the positive emotions might be distracting as well. So that we have to take into account that sometimes if students are distracted with very positive feedback or whatever, then it might hinder learning. But another example that I thought could be interesting in this context is that perhaps, you know, in the context of math education, it is so easy to develop tools to train the skills for doing simple calculations or checking the simple outcomes with multiple choice tests. And I don't know about what has been used by those people who reported in the PISA test that they used a lot of technology. Perhaps it was wrong type of technology they really used for learning mathematics, but perhaps they just tried to learn, let's say, something what could be done easily by the computers, so that to learn how to calculate or to learn how to choose the best answer in multiple choice tests. For example, perhaps even some of you have participated in the International Mathematical Kangaroo Challenge. It is, according to Wikipedia, the largest competition for school students in the world, with over 6 million participants from 77 countries in 2019. And actually, they should have right now until tomorrow their yearly meeting in Antwerpen, parallel meeting. And according to the goals, this Kangaroo Challenge underlines the joy of mathematics and encourages mathematical problem solving. And technically, it is all based on multiple choices that are somewhat limited in capturing problem solving skills. Now, the process is often more important than the outcome nowadays, as we know. Of course, behind the quizzes, before you get the final answer, it might be that you have to apply to problem solving process, but in the end, you can just click on a multiple choice item, and this is something that is maybe not the most needed goal nowadays, and therefore I don't know if it's good to say so, that I am even a bit happy that the number of participants significantly of Kangaroo Challenge has been significantly decreased in 2020, probably because of COVID-19. And now in the new situation, I believe that new skills and problem solving skills for finding solutions to new problems became much more important, as our good colleague, math professor Keith Devlin from Stanford University has described it very well as teaching mathematics as a way of thinking, not calculating. So that this is for the future. And you could, of course, read more about it in our Estonian Journal of Education, because his article is both in Estonian and in English available there. And according to this view, we have to learn how to use simple tools for math as Google, Wikipedia, email, and YouTube effectively for solving problems. And this is what the math classes usually do not do nowadays. It is a challenge, and this is not an individual challenge. Learning and problem solving is a socially shared process. Educators know a lot about this. However, educators do not know usually how to improve technology. They rely on the existing solutions, and if to use Emanuela's word, tinker, taking into account the perceived affordances of the existing tools. And this does not seem to be very effective. Therefore, I believe that educators and technology developers need to team up. It's the best way to make some truly valuable innovation. Even more than the researchers are needed to prove the effect of the tool and methodology. And for that, we need to understand what needs to be assessed and how to do that. But this is yet another challenge in learning how to give meaningful, immediate feedback using technology. And more challenges come from that area. For example, difficult natural language processing mechanisms are needed here to make significant progress. Thus, in conclusion, I see a lot of challenges, and I hope that you all could contribute, we all could contribute here in one or other way. And therefore, I wish you all fruitful discussions and great ideas that could become innovative tools for educators. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a very, very fruitful discussion, and we do have a lot to think about. But I very liked the place where you said that it's a socially shared process, and it is indeed. There is a need to team up for us as educators, as educational technologists, as those who are involved in educational world in any way. We do need to put the effort together basically to solve those problems. It's not one-way solution anymore. It doesn't work nowadays. And very much like that you underline that. We have hands up. Marwa. Yes.
Yes, because Margus mentioned mathematics, and it's a point of interest to me because we are organizing the Math Olympiad here in Egypt. So, and I am familiar with the kangaroo, but basically there was something that we noticed this year. This year we started the Junior Olympiad. I don't know if you are familiar with this one as well. But the Juniors Olympiad it's not like the Seniors one. The Seniors one, you have one specific for the mathematics. The mathematics one is the oldest in 60s. And then you have the physics and the bio and the robot. It says they are splitted. But for the Junior Olympiad, the chemistry, biology, mathematics, and physics, the four are grouped together. So we started this year, we thought it's better to start the Junior Olympiad so we can have good candidates or better candidates in the senior one. And actually, our hopes got not I can't say disappeared, but what we found is the fact is due to COVID, the students for 2 years, they learned nothing inside the schools. So their mathematical skills was really, really behind what they're supposed to be. Like I compare that with my age, with what I studied, with others, with different groups from the previous years, the performance in mathematics was really, really bad. And because the way they studied in the national system during COVID it played a huge role, and how they got examined in the past years, and for moving their examination process from moving understanding mathematics to move from a step to the other into MCQ tests. So the students don't understand anything actually related to mathematics. So they hardly can understand what is X, what is Y, what are those variables are doing. For example, what is trigonometry, the sine, the tan, the cosine, all what are those things and why they are happening around us, why we're studying them. And I can't blame them. It's worse. It's worse because of COVID for 2 years, the way they studied online. But even before this, generally speaking, what I used to see with hundreds of students when it comes to mathematics is the lack of understanding what is math all about. So it's like something came to you from the sky. The rules came to you from the sky. The understanding why you're using this formula, why this is happening, why, for example, we use the E, why we use the 10, why we use the sign. All those things are not used to be studied inside the school system. You just take it as a formula that you deal with, you do operations. We are like smart calculators when we are studying mathematics, advanced way of smart calculators. On paper, we can do very hard operations. But why we are doing what we are doing, most probably that this is not taught in most of the systems, unless teaching mathematics went into depth, and I think that most of the teachers will escape from this because of the time limitations they have inside the curriculum. And you mentioned PISA, and for PISA, this is a conflict of interest to me. Okay, PISA, okay, they measure the standards, but by the end, when it comes to PISA, it's a very standardized way of testing. So when they are testing students, they don't test them if they're really mathematicians or if they are really into science. They are, again, testing them in the operational standards. Are you good in doing this operation, or are you not good in doing those operations? And due to this, I found that in the Math Olympiad, we have good students, but when they solve something in mathematics, they solve it from the surface. So the student believes that he is moving step by step, that he is doing he is solving mathematics in a good way or something, but he doesn't understand that what he wrote on the paper from the process of understanding the mathematics when it comes to the mathematical Olympiad, because it needs a lot of thinking and creativity to solve the problems, is nonsense and it's nothing. So that was my comment related to mathematics, 2 observations this year, because I passed with a lot of answers, mathematical answers, because I grade a lot of those things. And I used to think why a student would write these steps and how a student can write 4 or 5 papers trying to solve a mathematical problem with intuition. But you can find some of them with good intuition, which is the cornerstone of mathematics, to have a good intuition, mathematical intuition, and others who can write 4 or 5 papers about nonsense, anything, and others who are good operational people who are good in operations, and those who didn't study anything for the last 2 years. So it's a chaotic scene when it comes to science and math. That's it.
Yes, I believe it's a good example of how our goals in schools maybe haven't been very clear according to the needs we have nowadays. So that often the goals have been to make computers from humans, so that humans could become computers that could do the same operations that could be done much more effectively with computers. But what I also thought in this context is that perhaps the students in Egypt, in this case, in this example, haven't been asked what is the purpose of math, and why do you learn something in math, and how it connects to the everyday life problems and that kind of things, and maybe this is the question for the future as well. What is the purpose of learning something?
Yeah, I think it should not be applied just to math, but to like literally everything, because I can very much relate. I'm not like a math person or math teacher, but I see the same story. It's like people are being taught something, trained to do something, to reproduce something, but with no deeper understanding why it is happening. Any other questions? Do we have any questions, comments? Okay, so probably we should proceed with our next speaker, which is, I hope I can pronounce your name right, Maria Bouters. Oh, okay. Who's a research professor of digital transformation and lifelong lifelong learning in the School of Digital Technologies in Tartu, in Aalto University, also in Estonia. And she's going to share with us the participant design in fast track use for hackathons. Arya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you tell me, Anastasia, what is the time limit so that I don't exceed my time?
25-30 minutes.
Okay, very good. I will share my screen, and I hope that if something comes boring, that you already know the stuff. A little bit like Marcus said also, that some of you might know. So some of you might know also what I'm gonna show. So in that sense, I have the chat visible. So just keep saying that pass, we know, go forward, and so forth. So what I'm going to tell is really close to what Marcos said in the putting the stakeholders together and emphasizing that we need to know what the other ones know and also be able to sort of step into their shoes. And participatory design is one of those who has started that quite long ago. So, but it's a slow process. So it doesn't really fit to hackathons because this, you have to speed up things. So I go a little bit on the history and where, for example, we can see that participatory design and design thinking overlap, because I will move towards design thinking and how we can speed up that process also so that you could have it in 2 or 3 days and have a prototype afterwards. And now, good. So participatory design, or some call it also Scandinavian design, especially me, because I'm originally from Finland. So it's closer to me, and that's why we sort of learn it in that way. But it started with democratizing factory workers' work conditions. So they wanted to emancipate the workers to make a difference on their work processes and what kind of tools they actually should use. And that's basically what you are trying to do. You are trying to bring together the people who are supposed to use the tools and figure out the processes that they should have with the tools. So it's not only the tools, but basically the whole system that you need to figure out to fit something for some purpose of the people to be able to use it. And to be able to do that, they of course needed tryouts. So already then, in 70s and so forth, they had mock-ups and different kind of future workshops, cooperative prototyping, ethnographic field studies, to figure out what should be done to change more than just a tool or just to invent a tool, but the potential processes and practices that are related to it. And one of the big issues with this bringing the workers, because they usually didn't know that much of the whole system, so they were more part in the system than knowing what it is, was to emancipate them so that they would actually see what their contribution makes to the whole thingy. And there's a quotation from Pellen, who is one of the very well known of still using participatory design, and from Finland, Bart, Engström and Miettinen and so forth, who have been, or actually still are through activity theory doing the similar kind of things in organizational studies. So trying to change them, and not necessarily through the tools, but what happens there. And still one of the main points with that is what we could say in Marcus terms is emotions. So where do the conflicts happen and what kind of things you could learn from that? Because usually the conflicts are the ones that show you the issues that you could start changing. So that's very briefly on that background. And then with the similarities with the design thinking that is really hyped now. Both of them have the big picture and the social innovative design idea as the basis. Both of them emphasize collaboration. So bringing different kind of students to the same table or same workshop or same floor or same room, but same somewhere to do something. And both of them are based very much on prototyping, different levels of prototyping. It can be paper, cardboard. Now, since you are all online, you can use Miro and all these tools that enable you to do something together, synchronous or asynchronous. And it is human-centered. This, for me, is a personal problem nowadays, because I think that everything that we should do, it should be more system-centered, because we should take the environment into the design also. So it's not enough anymore for us to think how we should be the ones using the tools or processes, but how we can do it in a sustainable way. So for me, this should be even broader than it originally has been. And also there, they emphasize in design thinking the, well, it's not that much emancipation, but empathy part. So you are able to understand all the people and environment and systems that are along and what their needs might be. And if you put one part in there, how it will change the rest of the parts. So while both have a strong emotional aspect in it. Thus, within design thinking, we get empathy, critical thinking, which for me comes very close to the self-regulation. So being able to reflect on how you learn, what kind of things you might need to be able to learn, know when you are distracted and figure out what you need not to be distracted or force yourself, or when do you need breaks. So the physical part is also there. What is something that I haven't found that many other approaches bring along is be aware of your assumptions. And this is very much for the designers, because as designers or those who are initiating the process of designing or innovating something, you need to be aware of your assumptions, because you will propose and you will act and you will direct the practices based on your assumptions. And if you are not aware of them, you might do something that you actually doesn't want to do because you already have a certain kind of mindset. And what I have found that this is maybe the hardest part of doing something, to be aware of your own assumptions and how they might direct your thinking. So when you start the whole thing of innovating something, think of your assumptions, where you come from, how might that affect on what you think would be good. And if you bring that open, it might also show some conflicts that you are not aware of, that the team might have, and that might be the good starting point. Break thinking habits. So what we will go through very briefly is different kind of methods that you can sort of go out of the box or think designerly. And of course, even though it's fast, try to collect your data somewhere. Just take screenshots, images somewhere. So even if you have done a day work of something, you can the next day go back. You have made decisions, and if they are not right, then you can go back and figure out to do something else. And there's the sort of, I think, the most known design thinking process that tries to show that it's not linear. So don't worry, you will go back and forward many times. And you will see other processes, and then I will tell what is my favorite one. Then a little bit background on the design thinking itself. So even though it's now a hype, it has actually very long history. So already from the 16th, Nigel Cross was thinking of how these designerly ways of knowing will happen. So what is different in those who are supposedly creative? So what do they do differently? Sort of jumping to conclusions. And then there's Horst, who brought in the wicked problems, which are exactly what you are solving. with math or physics or with other things. We get problems, like Margus just said, there are many challenges. You might not solve all, but you can at least make a mix out of them and try to do something different in the area. And then we come to Herbert Simon. I think everybody of you know him already. So rapid prototyping is already from there. So really, as it was in the participatory design, it's still there. Nobody has really come up with a better way to do it than just test and test and test and do a new round and a new round. Visual thinking. So many of the tools and techniques for creative thinking is through visualization. And now with this going online, there has been quite a lot of argumentation. Are we losing something because we cannot do it physically? So being as embodied with the visualization as before. And some argue that actually it's better because when it's online, you can document everything. And those of you who have been playing a lot with Post-its and papers and stuff, you know the effort of documenting it well enough, which really reduces quite considerably when it's online. Since I'm the generation who started everything very tangible, I still have a problem of being only digital. So I favor to play with the Post-its and then try to just document it as well as I can. So at the moment we have one room reserved for us in Tallinn University where we have our Post-its on the floor. We are trying to categorize them. So very old way. Then Brian Lawson continued with the designerly type of thing, and design thinking was by role, claimed to be more inquiry-based, which as you know, is also an educational method, inquiry-based learning. And Schön, you also brought up that while you are doing, you're actually reflecting. So when you do something, think also what happens in your mind. Why are you doing and how you are doing it, because that might tell you something. And now there's another model. And this model is good in a sense because it shows one of the main things that I think that in a hackathon you should adopt. So it has these going broad and going in, going broad and going in. And that means that when you go broad, you extend, you generate ideas, you try to go out of the box, you think everything that you could, that is not possible, that might not be possible. And out of that, you get more ideas, and then you narrow it to the most possible ones. And then with the next phase, you go again. So I would say that this is the main idea of the whole thing. So when you start to do, just select the techniques in a way that they best fit your team and use them like this. And then you get many examples. And then came IDEO and design thinking, and Hansa Platter Institute, who made it as a program, master program, and so forth. And this is my favorite one of the model, because I think that it's the best metaphor of what happens. So when you start, everything is a mess, and it keeps being a mess, and it keeps being a mess, and it keeps being a mess. And people start to go down that we are never going to solve this mess. It's not going to happen. And then suddenly it starts to like a thread going, and then you are in the end. But this part is a little bit challenging. All right, and here is the sort of more scientific names of these. So divergent thinking going out, and then converging thinking narrowing back. So here is the main model that I think that would be good for you to adopt in the hackathon. And it also has different type of ways of doing the stuff. So when you narrow, you are more analytical, you try to find the patterns, the principle, the themes that you could use. And when you go abroad like this, then you are doing sketches, probes, and you just try to be wild as you can. And then here are already some of the methods. that you could use in the different phases. And what I'm going to suggest to you as taking inspiration from. So this is Google's design sprint that we have been using quite many times in intensive design phases. So from usually, I think that the shortest that we used was 3 days. The 4+1 day is what they success, but 3 days is very doable and it ends up in a prototype. I'm not going to go to the link. I will ask Anastasia and Marva if I give the presentation or link separately to you or something like that, if you're interested in them. So basically what it does, you have already a team. So in day one, you don't need to form the team. So you have already gathered that time for yourself. You set the challenge and then you try to go wild and think of all kind of how might we, so how could we solve this, anything that comes to your mind. The second day is focus. So then you do sketching with different type of sketches. So everybody can sketch and then you narrow it again. So within the day you can go like this. And the third day is critiquing and making the scenarios. So basically, I think that you could do this in 1 day and this even in the second day. So then you are 2 days and testing it out in the third day. So here you would have many storyboards and then you are mixing and selecting them again. And then you have prototypes and basically then you can test them. And I have collected links. So there are the Google Sprint descriptions, how they do. So you can just select their ideas, not to follow them directly, but take the best that fits your team. And I also placed as a checklist what we have used. So if you go into those, don't worry that it has different challenges because it's an actual guideline for another very intensive design sprint. So, but it gives an overview how it can be done. So take it more as an example than a guideline for you. So what we made for the students to realize what actually happens. So this was Immigrant in Finland theme, and they had to research the team. So go around and sort of get the empathy to the problem. And of course, if you have in your team those who already represent it, you are well off because then you don't have to do that much research, and you might be that you already done the research. And then you list all kind of challenges that there are. Margus already said you some challenges, so you can pick some of those or your own. I don't know which one, where you are going forward. And after that, you can make the bunch of how might these. And this is one example how we have done it. So I'm not sure how much you can do physical, but basically you could at least bring your physical into the digital that you already know so that it's more concrete. And there you see my favorite stuff, paper and pens and post-its. And the next one is sketching. And what you do there, everybody sketches, then you combine sketches, then you do crazy eights and you combine those. And here's an example of crazy eight. So this is not yet the scenario, but you have 1 minute to do. I can see Anastasia knows it. You are nodding. So you are doing one minute for each slot, and it takes 8 minutes, and then you have 8 different kind of versions how the problem could be solved in some way. And then if you are 4 people, then you have quite many possibilities again to mix and choose. And then you do the choosing for the storyboards. And basically here you have the same kind of thing, different storyboards from members, then you choose and mix them. And then you have another decision making. So again, you are going back and forward, and then you have a prototype. The good thing is that when here's one our prototypes that we made in another project, which is a little bit more forward. It's actually has some sensors and do something with it. So it doesn't mean that you need to go that far with the prototype. It can be just a conceptual one and PowerPoints or whatever, but that could be also called a prototype. But what I like when it's more intensive and fast is that designers don't get stuck with their favorite idea, because it's too fast to create this ownership that this is my best idea. I'm not giving it out to you. We need to go for this. So you need to push them away and next one and away and the next one. So this sort of struggle of fighting for everybody's best idea is less apparent, and it's easier to go over it, that it might not be the best. The rest might choose something else and it mixed with some others. So I think that's a big benefit in those. Then there's a prototyping, which is basic prototyping. So nothing new in that. I think that you all have been doing it many times. And here is with the same, as you can see, the sensors are here. And that was the first testing of this tool here. Very simple, but still provided information if we should go forward or not. That's it. And now I'm ready for practical questions or other questions. And I hope that this helped something than it was in the scope that I was supposed to give.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you. We have a question from Matas. Your hand was up.
Oh, then I've used the wrong emoji. I wanted to clap.
Oh, it was a celebration. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, very inspiring. Thank you.
Anything new?
I actually didn't know about the Crazy 8 thing, so that was a completely new thing for me.
Good. Then I at least managed to do something.
It is always useful to hear how to transfer what we do normally in real world and don't even think of that into how can we implement that in a like tech solution way. So that was helpful.
Yes, I quite enjoyed it as well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I love the convergent and divergent thinking. I didn't recognize that's how I actually think as well. So having the terms to describe what I do and how I actually teach is really just my brain. That was really, really very good to have that contextualized for me. Thank you so much.
Good.
Okay, while everybody's digesting a whole lot of new information, we will go to our next speaker, who is Matas Linder. Matas, he's representative of Falling Walls Foundation, and he's gonna talk a little bit about the main mission of the Falling Walls. And as far as I know, they have encountered a lot of intertwining between those who are trying to implement solutions, new ways, and those who are choosing what is worthy of living and what is not. So it would be good to hear some insights on how can we adjust our solutions for them to survive in the real world. So Matas, yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anastasia. I'll just quickly switch over to the PowerPoint, and I hope I can make this work. Okay, sorry, I was gone for a second. Is everybody still with me? Okay, awesome.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Let's go then. So, as you correctly said, Anastasia, I'm from the Falling Walls Foundation. We consider ourselves the place for breakthrough thinking, which just means to say that we gather breakthrough science leaders in a network, and we try to connect them as best as possible and draw as many synergies out of them as possible. But I'm really here to speak a bit more about myself. As you already know, I'm Mathis. I'm the project manager for future learning at Falling Walls. But to be honest, most of the time, I'm just asking myself the question of what am I actually doing here? Mostly in the context of my work, but let me explain why I'm thinking that. At Falling Walls, I'm mostly looking at what are cool new innovations that are coming in, that are popping up. That's like the horizon scanning aspect of it. And then we try to connect them with other people who are really interesting and learn about new trends that are going on, like build discussion rooms about really interesting topics. And so I have to, like, I talk to a lot of people who are in their in their tiny niches in terms of learning innovation, are the leading experts and super, super exciting. There's just one problem. I haven't studied or have no formal education in education actually, or in learning. So just to like give you a rundown, like my professional career started as a volunteer in China for a year in a school that is the most education like it's gonna get from here on out. I then moved on to study cultural anthropology, which is not as bad as it looks on the picture. And then I studied sustainability studies, which is not as good as it looks on the picture. But there's no education in there at all, which, and then like 1.5 years ago, Falling Walls asked me, hey, can you run this category for us, this little new project that we're designing, future learning. And of course, my first reaction was like, why? Like, what are you thinking? I have no real skill, but I'm here, and I did accept the job offer, which is mostly because I really do care in a weird inherent way about how teaching and learning can be improved in the world. And what that has led me on was, of course, in the last 9 or 10 months that I've been, 18 months, I guess, that I've been at Falling Walls. It has led me on a journey of like discovery and learning myself. And so I've stumbled across many things that I had to relearn about how learning innovation might work. And I stumbled across a lot of dysfunctional beliefs. So if I may, I would like to use this opportunity of like having 15 minutes, I guess, to speak, to use this or abuse this group as a kind of therapy place and talk a little bit about my struggles with these dysfunctional beliefs and what kind of lessons I've drawn out of them. I think that should also be fair or be interesting to people who probably know a lot more about the theories behind learning, the theories behind education, the theories behind innovation, and might still be like somewhat entertaining or educating to you as well. So let me start with dysfunctional belief number one that I encountered that was interesting for me to kind of throw away, was that innovation means inventing new technology. That's what I came in there first and thought was the deal. And I looked at a lot of games, a lot of like new XR, AR technologies and cool new ways that technology can augment and enhance learning. But I have to go back a second. Every year we have a competition. We call it the Global Call for Nominations, where we try to find the one coolest project that we had every year that happened and that kind of broke the wall, that was a breakthrough in many ways. And we use the word breakthrough a lot because that's also the idea behind Falling Walls. That's the name, the way the name was generated. It's about the falling of the Berlin Wall. And so we're trying to find out what are the next walls to fall, what are the next breakthroughs. And so, and we call these best projects or people of the year, we call them breakthrough of the year. And so what I want to do to illustrate my point now with the dysfunctional belief number one is I want to introduce you to our breakthrough of the year 2021 of Oh, we also call our breakthrough of the year lovingly Boti. So if you hear me reference that, that's that. Our breakthrough of the year 2021 is George Cowell from the Rising Academies Network. And I think he must have landed just a few minutes ago, and I have to run after this to go see and visit him because he's speaking on the stage here in Berlin in a couple of days. But what George Cowell and the Rising Academy Network is doing, they're bringing very well-designed, very high-quality curricula and personalized learning to students in really hard-to-reach contexts. Mostly in Africa at the moment, but like millions of students already. And the way they're doing that is that they combine podcast and radio technology, combine that with a chatbot that will feed the students the right content that they have to listen to, depending on what they put an AI behind that, and depending on the answers of the students, they will get new impulses, new ideas. So highly personalized learning, and all of that in a WhatsApp or SMS based format. So this is super cool. But then I had to have a conversation with our stage manager and our production, basically our main producer of this event that is happening in 2 days, where George is supposed to speak on a stage next to a Nobel laureate of social sciences and next to somebody who invented something in quantum physics. And I had to explain that innovation to our stage manager, our producer. And I was like, it's this innovation with radio and podcasts and chatbot. And this is Tony, this is the producer. He was like, what? Chatbot, handy, mobile phones, radio of all things? What is why would that be exciting to anybody in this room? And I think that hits the point really well of a dysfunctional belief that we have, is that often enough, it's not about a cool new quantum physics kind of innovation or level of innovation. It's about throwing existing things together in a very effective way and using them to access people who are otherwise hard to access. To use a Harry Potter reference, is less about inventing new ingredients, but rather about putting new ingredients together to invent a really strong and powerful potion. We also use this quote a lot at Future Learning. The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. That's by William Gibson, who was a science fiction writer. And I think that's kind of the spirit that we're following. And the way we can measure that, and now I feel a bit stupid of showing you this because you know this model, of course, it's the SAMR model about technology in classrooms. And when I learned first about this model, it was interesting to me to learn that it's not only about being able to categorize different new innovations or projects into these categories, but also looking at what came before. So maybe George Cowell's innovation with their chatbot is a redefining project, is something that would fall under the R category in this. But what is interesting is what all the things that came before that as well, and they have to be considered as well. And so if we look at new technologies or new innovations, new projects, new concepts, then we also look at maybe they're a really cool substitution project. Maybe they have the potential to redefine something further down the line. So that is one completely new way we're looking, or I'm now looking at projects that are coming in. Dysfunctional belief number 2, learning happens exclusively in schools, universities, and training centers. Again, something that I took pretty much for granted, and I never thought that I did. I never really thought about that, but yeah, of course, schools, universities, and training centers, or any other vocational training places. And the person who convinced me otherwise is Deepak Ramola, who is from Project Fuel. He was a finalist last year, and he's also a bit of a favorite, a Falling Walls favorite. Everybody loves him. If you ever get on a call with Deepak, you will know why. And he has started his career on YouTube mostly. And he has this catchphrase that he says in front of every video. He says, "Hi, my name is Deepak Ramola and I love people." And I've been asking them for a long time what a life lesson. And the whole concept around Project Fuel revolves around this. Like, it's about finding life lessons and turning them into curricula, or turning them into really really useful pieces of learning content for everybody, and not only in curricula, not only in formal curricula, but also outside of that. So they, for instance, do art with that. They collect these pieces of information and create traditional art on site for communities around that wisdom. They have classes on menstrual on teaching young women about menstrual cycles, for instance. Around that, they write letters to refugees from different places in the world, which is just super heartwarming to read. And they have actually recently created a whole database of these life lessons that you can just openly access from anywhere in the world, for just like anybody to learn outside of any context of school, universities, or training centers. And I think that, like, for us, it was also super interesting to see not how we, of course, like that. We all love DigiEduHack, but how the jurors actually love that. We have super high caliber venture capitalist jurors, and when they saw that, they were completely over the moon with that. They just loved the cuteness of it. They loved how it was like really impactful in its own sense, without being super technologically advanced or somewhat tied to some formal curricula. We used the Holon IQ table to kind of look at, for instance, different places that education can happen. And the three ones that I want to point out so far is after school, which is something that is often completely overlooked. Of course, games and simulation, which are kind of rising right now, but like games and simulation, I think also, and importantly, outside of any formal context for schools. I think there's a lot to be like discovered in games and simulations that don't write learning on their headline. And then completely alternate projects that just break every rule that has to do with like where education has to happen. And DigiEduHack's example is one of them. Dysfunctional belief number 3. And the final one is learning innovation needs to focus on learning resources. This is something that I only learned, I think, 3 weeks ago in a call with one of our consultants. We talked about the current setup of our nominations, of like people who are interested in falling walls in our projects, who are part of this competition, and how they are all tending to focus so much on learning resources, on the tools that deliver education. And by extension, we are focused on that because we are, of course, also looking for them and accepting them and bringing them through that process. And to illustrate that, I had actually one project in this year that kind of broke this dysfunctional belief, and they're called Geek Teachers, and they're a project from Russia. And they're basically a network of teachers, or a network that empowers teachers rather through really playful means, and that kind of does a teacher training in a very fun way, to be very blunt. It's all about just having fun, being a teacher who also shows that fun to the world. And they're curated by 100 as one of their leading innovations of, I think, 2020. And they're just super, super lovely and amazing. And they're so impactful in their own rights, not because they have some new cool learning resource or they bring access to cool new resources, but just by empowering a very crucial aspect of education and making these crucial people in education, making them more powerful to their learners. And that's kind of how I learned about this like triangle between learning resources, educators, and the learners, and how we were only focusing on learning resources at Falling Walls until recently. So this is something that we're actually looking into now, to have more projects that actually revolve around empowerment of educators, empowerment of learners, completely outside of the question of like, what are the learning resources that they need for that as well. Yeah, and I'm already done with my little rant about 3 dysfunctional beliefs I have. And the only thing that I know now, after learning about these 3 dysfunctional beliefs, is that there are probably at least 97 more that I haven't found yet about myself that I still need to discover. So I will post my email in the chat in a second, so you can educate me after that. I'm looking forward to your emails about other dysfunctional beliefs that I might be holding, that you might have discovered right now in this presentation, and about reversals of that, projects that are really good examples of why they're a dysfunctional belief. And so all that remains for me to say now is thank you for the therapy session. I feel much better now. And yeah, I hope to talk to you soon in different contexts as well.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. That was just simply amazing. And I also like how you focused on kind of like often overlooked matters, which do matter, and they're like they have a great impact on the learning outcome. But we as a society, I wouldn't say just following walls, but we as a society normally overlook those, unfortunately. So I hope this will change soon.
Yeah, it's our job to do that, also at Following Walls, to be part of that change.
Thank you. Okay. So, and last but not least, our speaker is Sevinch Bicher, who is an ESL primary teacher and the educational technologist as well. And she's going to talk about challenges in the early learners education. So Sevinch, what do you have for us?
Thank you so much for introducing. Actually, I won't explain something totally different like we talked right now. Actually, my topic is similar. And also I want to thank you to Mathis, because after your presentation, I felt the hope towards education that I lost actually. So thank you so much. It was like a real therapy. So let me share my presentation, please. Yes. Yeah, I think you can see that. Right now, I will try to show you the inside of the classroom a little bit. And I am working with the 3rd graders in the primary school right now. And I am in a private school in Turkey. Although we have lots of nice and good opportunities on behalf of technology in the school, I had experienced lots of challenges during this pandemic period. I want to share those challenges with you too, and I want to talk about how can we overcome them a little bit. And at the end of the presentation, I will try to share some useful resources with you. Maybe you can interested, and that can be helpful for you in the hackathon too. By the way, in our title, you see the early learners education, but as we understood from the presentations, those challenges are valid for each age groups actually. I will mention the similar things actually too. So let me show you. Before everything else, I want to explain what do I mean by saying early learners, because as a teacher, to help our learners, we have to know about their characteristics. Without knowing their characteristics, I don't think we can be helpful for them. So I want to explain what do I mean by early learners. Here, those resources I share, those resources that I share with you can be used for the preschool and kindergarten students and also primary students too. But of course, with a little bit of tinkering and with a little bit of creativeness, we can adapt those resources for the elder groups too, actually. So When we think about a child, we can say that they are active, actually. We cannot wait for them to sit on a chair and listen to you without moving. And they're also active, both physically and mentally, we can say. They are so curious and creative. They want to discover their environment a lot. They can ask lots of questions too. They can give you some hard times while you are trying to give the best answer to them. They can ask you another one and you can be shocked actually, because they are so interesting. Their mind is not working like an adult. Their mind is working totally different from adults actually. And they are playful. They need games. When you teach something by using games to them, they can get the topic so easily. They can learn it so quickly. But if you try to give them a lecture, I'm sorry, you cannot take good results from that lecture, from that lesson actually. So basically, when we look at their characteristic, we can understand that they need to be active, they need to play, and they have to discover. We have to trigger their curiosity. So early childhood education outcome should focus on their social, cognitive, and emotional improvement, not only the academic skills. Yeah, I think you understood the child world after this. Right now, I want to show you a video about how pandemic affected us. The video is from UNESCO. You can actually, if you visit their website, I shared it in the references part, you can see some other testimonies from teachers and from some students from different ages, actually. And they are sharing their opinions about this period. And they were really interesting. So if you don't mind, let's watch it.
Teachers are kind enough to send us every day the courses. If we have a question, we can simply ask them via WhatsApp, for example.
I'll try my best and see. With the little resources I have, I'll be able to upload as much as possible.
Hay mucha gente que no sabe utilizar los medios digitales, entonces bueno, es un momento de aprendizaje.
Peut-être temps de repenser notre position, notre place dans ce monde et peut-être remettre l'éducation au cœur de notre société.
I believe we will get through this, so stay optimistic.
Yeah, as you see, the problem is global, and I am trying to stay optimistic about all the challenges that we face with. I hope you can manage the same thing too, because otherwise we cannot handle the situation. And please just be aware of this. You are not the only teacher who is getting those challenges. We are not alone. We are all having the same or similar problems around the world right now. And when you ask me how was the classroom before the pandemic, I a little bit think, because I realized that I cannot remember how was it before. But actually, it was like in these pictures, and there wasn't any social distance. We can do group works with our students without any hesitation, and everything was actually normal. But right now, our normal is totally something different. Right now, when we see this kind of picture, I think we don't surprised. I think you all right now let me explain what are we having in my country. Right now, we turn back in Turkey, we turn back the face-to-face education, and the classrooms, being in a classroom with masks, it's really so hard. And I'm struggling with the situation as an adult, but think about the children. They are having lots of hard things about the situation, but actually they adapt themselves to the situation. They don't complain about this anymore because they got used to it. They have a natural talent about adaptation topic. And let me explain more what did we had in this period in Turkey actually. When the coronavirus started, after a while, we had online lessons in the whole part of the country. But then before the second wave, they decided to reopen the schools partly, and we experienced the hybrid teaching method. And for 2 days, we were in the school. For 3 days, we were in the online teaching. Then it wasn't enough, actually. And they said that it's not working like this. So they created another method, and we did synchronous teaching. We did online teaching and face-to-face teaching at the same time in one lesson time, actually. And that was amazing, but somehow we could handle. I think you had the same situations too. Right now, actually after that, they figured out that the virus is getting hard, the numbers are getting high, so they closed the schools again, and we had the online education one more time. And right now, we did the whole things one more time, and we turned back to the face-to-face education. And finally, my students, when the coronavirus had started, my students were in the first grade, right? In the second term of the first grade. Right now, they're in the third graders, but I can definitely tell you that I have different learners dynamic right now in the classroom. They are not same students right now. They changed a lot. And you know, they were the lucky ones actually, but think about the others who doesn't have some opportunities to get this kind of education, because my students were taking 9 lessons each day. But when we look at the public schools, when we look at some parts in my country, some students couldn't reach these opportunities. And actually, there was a scheduled curriculum for them, but they didn't have enough device. And there wasn't enough support for them too. And I know that some families choose some kids. If they have siblings, they shared the devices. One day, one of the students took the education. The other day, the other one took the education. And right now, there is a huge imbalance between those kids actually, with the private students and the public students. And the situation is that. And I know some teachers too who doesn't have enough devices for teaching actually. That was the interesting point too. And probably because of this situation, we reopened the schools. That's another issue. I can talk about it more actually. So digital literacy. This is another challenge. Actually, you have the enough device, you have the enough connection for the education, but if you don't have the knowledge to use that platforms, to use those devices, what will you do? We experienced the situation with some of the teachers, even in my school too. Some teachers who are elder than me, they didn't know how to open even Zoom. And there wasn't any webinar or any education for that. Actually, most of the teachers figured out to use those platforms by themselves, how to use them. They figured out how to use those platforms by themselves first. Then they they guided their learners and also the parents of the learners, actually. And then the other challenge was classroom atmosphere for the coronavirus period for us, because classroom atmosphere changed drastically, we can say. And one day we were in the classroom, but suddenly we create online classes for us, and our students affected a lot from this situation. Try to figure out when you have some classroom management problem in the classroom, you can directly solve it so quickly by using eye contact or by touching to your student. You can solve the problem so easily with just a little move or just a little word. But when you are away from your students, it's getting so hard to manage those kind of problems. I'm sure that you always used, please turn on your webcam, click on your microphone, I cannot hear you, kind of words in your lessons. Or probably most of your students didn't appear on the screen, or they couldn't focus on the lesson because of the external factors in their houses. It happened to me a lot, and I'm sure that you experienced the same situation too. And it was really hard to manage those things while sometimes with your students in the face-to-face, but we had to handle those situations while we were away from our students. Right now, you will see an example from the first year of my teaching, year with the kindergarten students. Actually, this is the best example of a classroom management issue. Some of the kids are screaming, and the other student trying to push the others. And I am a freshman, I'm in my freshman year, and I don't know how to handle the situation too. So please try to watch that and try to understand that handling those kind of classroom managements can be harder while you are away from your students too. Actually, if you have worked in the kindergarten, you can get used to this kind of voices in the classroom a lot, because they can scream, they are curious, and there is, if you realize, there's only one device there, and if you give only one device to the one child, of course, others tries to do something and get the attention, because they are curious too. They want to use that device too. And think about that while you are having this kind of problems while you are away from the students. And that's an interesting point for us. So communication was another challenge for us in this period, because only a teacher cannot handle anything for the learners, actually. You can do your best, but you cannot get 100% good results, actually, because you have to work collaboratively with the parents, with the school managements, and with the learners, actually. If there is something wrong in the one part, it will appear that if there's something wrong in one part, we can understand that the result won't be so good, actually. So in this period, I had experienced a lot of communication problems with the parents, and I remember that I always I was always trying to answer some phones because they were always asking something, and they were always trying to do something else that I guided for them, that I prepared for them actually. But we are talking with the primary and kindergarten students, so every part should use the same language to make the efficient learning environment for the students actually. And it was getting much more harder in these times. And autonomy part, I think this part is similar with the Margus's mentioned that self-regulation actually. And when we think about the primary students and kindergarten students, we can say that they are able to be autonomous actually, and they are able to do that better than adults. But we have to go step by step. We have to give them chance to understand the topic, and also they have to discover it by themselves. We have to support their critical thinking skills actually to make them more autonomous. And if we let them to do it, if we let them to take the advantage of play, and if we let them to go step by step, you can be sure that they can be great autonomous learners actually. And here I want to suggest you a blog. I shared the link at the end of the presentation. If you're interested, you can go there and check it because it's giving some important tips about promoting learners' autonomy in young learners. And another topic that I want to mention is evaluation. With the early childhood, in the early childhood education, we have to observe our students to evaluate them. We cannot prepare state exams with them. We shouldn't actually. We have to observe their actions. We have to observe their to the activity, actions to the topics. If only we do that, we can help them and we can guide them a lot. But in this period, we became away from our, and we couldn't have chance to observe them a lot. And that was a real for us. And learners with special needs, I think they were forgotten in this period. They were neglected, but actually they need that attention more than the other students actually. But most of the research shows that they were really forgotten here. And even parents didn't know how to react them. Even educators didn't know how to help them. And most of the educators didn't focus on them. So this topic was a big and huge challenge for this period for me. I don't have a special need. I don't have a learner who needs special education, special need, but I have some friends, and even they don't have enough even they didn't find enough support to for their learners actually, and they are still struggling. And time for self-care. That's the issue of teachers for me. Actually, in this period, learners came from one part and classroom management was asking another thing, and parents were talking a lot. And I realized that in this period of time, I didn't do anything that I like as a teacher. And I realized that I lost my spirit towards education a little bit. But we shouldn't do that, definitely. Actually, we have to stay optimistic and we have to take care of ourselves at first. Otherwise, we cannot help the others. First, we have to heal ourselves as a teachers. Then we can get enough strong to support our students too. So from time to time, I think as teachers, we have to learn say no for the parents and for the learners a little bit for their own good. So I talked about lots of challenges, but what is the solution? Right now, I will share the biggest thing that I learned thanks to Emanuele in the EdTech Tartu. And I think the solution is here, tinkering. We have to be flexible. We have to be creative a little bit. And when we know what do we have, and when we analyze the things that we have, when we analyze the opportunities that we have, we can adapt them into our current situation easily. So a little bit tinkering can help us, I think. Right now, I want to give you one example about tinkering. In the first picture, you see a VR headset. This may be expensive for most of us. As an alternative, maybe we may use Google Card boxes, but for these ones, we have to pay a little bit more. But here is another alternative for you. We can create our own VR headset by using only plastic bottles. I won't show you the video. You can see that after the presentation if you wish, because it's a little bit long, but I want to show you the result of the video. Here. They used only the plastic bottles, and they even created the lenses by using the bottles too. And it's working. That's the example of tinkering, I think. And here I used Google Cardboard boxes with my students, and that's the example of this. I want to show you this video, and please pay attention to the little girl's reaction, because she's having so much fun and she's smiling very well. I think with just a little bit of tinkering, your students can have the same experience too. Yeah, I think seeing their smiles is the most precious moments actually for me. So now the teaching resources part. I won't mention them one by one, but after the presentation, if you wish, if you're interested, we can share them with you and you can check them a little bit. But I want to tell you this one, the ORF technique is so useful with the very young learners in kindergarten, because it uses rhythm in the lessons, and when you put rhythms in the activities, when you use some rhymes in the activities, they can memorize the things so easily. And here are some song lists. Again, nursery rhymes. And then you will see some circle time activities here if you wish. And there is a webinar record to see how to adapt your circle times in the online education. It's really helpful if you wish. And we said that They cannot be a thing without games. We cannot ignore games in the young learners education. So there are some game ideas for your virtual lessons. And by the way, they are mostly free, totally free actually. And I said that we have to trigger their imagination and also their curiosity. To do that, science experiments can be good, actually. Here are some examples for you, and probably you know this website. This is Scratch, and by using Scratch, you can do some basic coding with your students, and even 5 years old students can create their own animations by using Scratch. We tried together. They are able to do that actually. And there are some reading resources here. When you are away from your students, reading is the best way to support them, because by using only one book, you can support their reading, critical thinking, and creative thinking skills with only one material. Of course, if you use them in a right way, actually. So these materials can be helpful, maybe. And I want to share some sources for you to read about the pandemic's effect on the education and also about the special needs learners. Maybe you can check them. And here is my references. So I hope we can find our spirit towards learning again, and we can support our learners a lot. And I'm sure that you will find great solutions in this hackathon. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it me? Am I?
Yes, you're waving at us.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's not actually a question. It's just more like I'm very grateful and thankful for Miss. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but Stevens, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. The name is correct. Okay, I'm really thankful, and it's very comfortable to feel and to see that teachers from other parts of the world share the same you shared as solutions as challenges. Really, we went through these steps during these 2 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have any clue what is going on and how to handle the situation, and our lessons were more like a mess. Okay, but after that, what you mentioned, communication with the parents and communication with other teachers, attending seminars and webinars, asking other teachers for their opinion, and actually even attend online lessons from other teachers from different parts of the world really helped to shape our skills as online teachers. And I know that the crisis is met, but we
and I think we lost her for a while.
Yeah.
When she's back,
in these insights we are trying to be, and so therefore I'm very thankful. Thank you very much. The presentation was amazing. It's like you were talking on behalf of every teacher in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're just on time to conclude this session of today. And I would like to ask Primla to say a few words to conclude this, to sum it up, and most importantly, to say what can we do about all that we've heard today. What is the challenge all about? How can we contribute? What should we do? So Primla,
Hi, thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen. Give me a minute, please. Yes. Tell me when you can see, please. Okay. I just want to say thank you so much. Before I even began, I felt as though there was a spirit of camaraderie speaking among everybody here. I am a lecturer at a tertiary institution. Well, I left there, but that's how I did my work for about 20 years. And since the pandemic hit, we've just had so many problems. And to hear everybody say what they have, even to recognize, as Matthias said, that learning occurs outside of the traditional formal institutions. I've learned so much here today that, I mean, I knew them, but I didn't understand that there were actual things going on elsewhere because you just knew only a little part of the world. So these kinds of situations where we have hackathons and meet together is truly priceless. Learning is going on the sub level, on the conscious level, and in every way possible. So very grateful. I'm Primla. I'm one of the co-founders of EdTest Estonia 2021, and I'm here to speak to you to sum up, as Anastasia said, about the things that we face here today. So thank you, Anastasia. The title of my summary is A Wicked Problem, Low-Tech Infrastructure Remote Education. Truly, I hadn't heard of that term, wicked problem, before, but if you're like me, it sounds quite ominous, quite scary. And I was very moved by Professor Barter's presentation when she brought it up, because what we face right now in this particular crucial context is a wicked problem. A wicked problem, by definition, really is one that is difficult to solve. It's incomplete, it's contradictory, it has moving and changing parts. It's difficult to recognize the issues, and clearly we have that, as the speakers before have highlighted. And the wicked problem to me, how I've termed it, is low-tech infrastructure remote education. Now, if you're like me, that sounds like a paradox, a contradiction, because remote education by definition requires you to have some degree of infrastructure that's technological, and that I'm defining it as low-tech. So just to be clear, low-tech infrastructure, as I'm using it here today, is an environment where the technology is such that you don't have access to internet or limited access, as Savinch mentioned earlier, or you have no devices on which to have the internet. So you have the internet connectivity, but no devices to access them, or limited devices. So how therefore can you have any sort of remote education when you have low-tech infrastructure? This is the heart of the problem. And so just to boil it down to its bones, we're talking about technology use in education. Now, as Professor Barters showed me, I clearly am a holistic thinker, a visual thinker, using Robert H. McKinn's model, where I have to pull the things out of the ethers and out of my brain and put it in a diagram of sorts. So for me, to help you understand what I think this wicked problem is about, I have pulled up a very old fable, very old parable of the 6 blind persons and the elephant. I know you probably know it, and if you don't, I really am not going to spend too much time, but just to tell you the kind of the meat of the matter. So there are 6 blind persons, and they have never encountered an elephant. They're blind, they're born blind, but they were told how gentle an elephant can be, how caring it can be, how destructive it can be. Just basically a lot of contradictory terms to describe this one entity. And so out of curiosity, these 6 blind persons wanted to experience the elephant. I hope I'm not going too basic for anybody, but this is how I think like a child. And so the 6 persons were given a different part of the elephant to look at. On the extreme left, you see one holding the tail. Moving towards the right, you see one holding the posterior leg. Another one is climbing up to touch the air. A bit of technology there going on, a ladder being used. Another one is feeling the anterior leg. One is feeling the tusk, and one is feeling the trunk. Now you can imagine each one of these persons' perspectives was very different, yet they were all looking at the same elephant. So when they got together afterwards to discuss what they saw, one said it was the elephant has a long structure towards a long structure that they can feel. Another one felt something strong and sturdy. Another one felt something that could flap. Another one felt something that was sharp and almost cool to the touch. Another one felt something that could be pliable and turned around. So when they spoke, they said that this is the elephant, but none of them had the same perspective. And so they argued amongst themselves to say, well, no, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, whatever the case may be. But the point I'm making here is that even though they had different perspectives, it was on the same topic. And so to me, in this wicked problem, technology use in education here, it all depends upon your perspective. What is it that you're seeing? And so what does technology use in education mean to you? What I'm trying to say, I hope not so sillily, is that it depends on who you are and who you are in the equation. And so according to what the speakers before has said to us, we're talking about educational technologists, we're talking about students, we're talking about parents, innovators, we're talking about all of the educational stakeholders, including information technology specialists. And I ask you, is there any one perspective that is more important than the other? No, there isn't. Because together you recognize that the blind persons, when they put all their perspectives together, it was them describing the elephant. So our wicked problem requires that we have the different perspectives. So what is the challenge? The challenge is to develop low-cost, effective and sustainable educational technology infrastructure to teach English language and mathematics remotely in secondary schools. As easy as that was to say, it is by no means an easy task. It is indeed a wicked problem because in these environments that we're talking about, these crucial contexts, we have low-tech infrastructure that must be used to teach remotely. So having said that, I believe a few of the challenges that we're going to face in this hackathon are based upon the perspectives that I mentioned earlier. Now, what I have here is a few things that I readily jump to mind in terms of what could be a problem. I'm not saying that they're the only thing that could be seen in terms of challenges, but things that come to mind for me. So for the educational technologists, we're looking for cost-effective, sustainable solutions, as Professor Margot said earlier. We need to find things that will work, but not necessarily try to reinvent the wheel like Mathis said. For the information technology specialists, they're looking from a technological point of view, of course, about the absent or diminished technological infrastructure. For example, as Mathis showed, we have in Jamaica and in Nigeria, where we found a cohort of persons using WhatsApp because of the low bandwidth to teach. Now, WhatsApp is great when you have nothing else, but it does have limitations. Furthermore, if you have no internet connectivity or no device to teach with that, where exactly are you? You're in a wicked problem, that's where you are. So the IT specialists will now be looking more at the low bandwidth, how many devices are present, and a lot of the things that we found in my country in Jamaica, as well as in the public schools, that is not the private schools, as well as in Nigeria. And as Savinch said, you have parents, you have teachers using their own money to buy data plans because they don't have access through their schools. You can imagine they're not being compensated for that. And so that it does create some sort of a dynamic which is not sustainable. The third perspective I find is often ignored, not on purpose, but it does happen, the students. So for example, if we're talking about a sustainable and effective EdTech infrastructure, you have to know your learners. Now in secondary schools, we're talking about ages 10 to 14, possibly even higher, 14 to 18, depending upon the different countries. And some of them don't want radio. They don't. They want the games. But how do you translate the games into something that is now sustainable in a low-tech infrastructure environment? So the point I'm making here, the student's perspective must also be considered, because we are not teaching ourselves as teachers, or we're not teaching the parents, we're teaching the students. So always being cognizant of the end user or the consumer of education, who is the student, it must always be a priority, because we must create an environment where they're able to learn. Another perspective, and I kind of twinned it here for number 4, was based upon what Savinch said earlier about the students and educators. in this current situation, so the current challenges now, we're in 2021, we're almost 2 years into the pandemic. We've had a situation where students have been told to go home and be taught remotely, then they come back into school. There has been a desocialization during that time. And what I mean by that is the students learned to be a bit freer at home. The teachers have learned to be able to teach, but not in contact with the students, not directly anyway. And so when they come back into the classroom, you have this diminished idea of what the role should be. Sometimes the students are a bit agitated, sometimes the teachers don't necessarily know how to reach them. And so in this current challenge to make a solution to meet the demands for teaching English language and mathematics in secondary schools, we must remember that these are now the same students who have gone through 2 years of pandemic and they have changed. And so how do we meet them or create a solution that actually takes them into understanding and learning and considering the fact that they have now been digitized through and through over and over for the last 2 years. So remembering the students and educators' point of view is also important. I've highlighted educators again separately because, as Vinch intimated earlier, it's not easy to manage a classroom remotely. Tom over there, sit down. Tom, stop doing that. How do you do that effectively when a child can get up and walk away? So if we're talking about a challenge that's asking you to create a solution, an EdTech solution for remote education, how do we tackle this elephant in the room? It's not easy for classroom management remotely, but it has to be addressed if we're going to have a sustainable solution. The last one, I think, and I'm not saying that this is the only perspective. I haven't brought up the innovators or the entrepreneurs. Those are other perspectives that are very important here today. But the parents and students, I have a 22-year-old and a 16-year-old. One is in university, one is in high school. And I tell you, I have to micromanage my 16-year-old who's a boy. And the amount of apps and the amount of things that I have to do for one subject, he doesn't do one subject, to be able to help him orient himself because he's not self-regulated yet. He has not been taught. He has to be taught by the same teachers who have to also deal with all of the problems I mentioned before. So how do I help him in maneuvering through those many different apps? So what I'm trying to do for you now is to give you a synopsis of our snapshot of what we currently face from a different perspectives and to ask us to look at that moving forward and find a solution. Because on this point here about the many apps, it may work for a teacher to deliver the subject that way. But as the consumer of that knowledge, that information, as a parent and a student, when I'm consuming that, it becomes just haphazard, hopscotch, because for biology, I'm using that one, and then for English, I'm using that one. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be creative, and I'm not saying we should be having one way of doing everything. But if we remember, the students are the consumers, and that what one person must digest that on a daily basis, then we start to remember that they need to be the focus of this solution. Again, not to underscore, not to negate the fact that other perspectives are important. We can't look at the elephant completely unless we look at all perspectives. The elephant, of course, being a wicked problem, yeah? Okay. So in trying to frame the things I think the hackathon participatory approach might deem important to look at, I came up with a few things. These are not the sum total, because again, I'm only speaking as an educational technologist and as a parent and a teacher. I am not an innovator per se. I'm not an entrepreneur in this regard. I need to be able to be guided by other persons. But these are a few things that I think were mentioned earlier, and as well I've seen in my life as a mother and as a teacher. And so just starting at the very left, we've mentioned collaboration. From Professor Margot straight down to Vinch, we have spoken about this need to collaborate. And of course, even though it was inferred earlier, I have highlighted and itemized who those persons are for the collaboration. It is crucial that we meet together and understand the different perspectives in understanding this mammoth wicked problem from a different angle. And you remember now, in these crucial contexts, we may have something very different compared to first world countries, in that the low-tech infrastructure is not going anywhere. For the last 2 years, it's been the same problem over and over again. And all we've done is put a band-aid on the problem. It's not fixed, it's not even working. Again, the private schools are better off. Even in developing countries, the private schools are not a problem. It's the public schools that are the issue. So collaboration is key. Moving towards the right, the top segment of the circle here, I think cutting out the middleman might be important. And what do I mean by that? Sevinch, I think, put it very nicely. It's a bottom-up approach. It's still on the point of collaboration, but we are also, and Martha said it as well, looking at the teacher, building up the teacher to be able to learn together. And as Gufran mentioned a while ago, to be able to learn in this environment from persons doing it all over the world, you're able to know, see as a teacher, how to do things and even put your own spin on things. So cutting out the middleman to me means not looking at administration, handing out decisions, but asking the teacher and the students to come together with solutions and put it forward, right? I'd like to bring in here a study that was actually done by one of our colleagues from the University of Tartu. Her name is Tatya Johnson. Tatya Johnson et al., in 2021, they had done an ethnographic study. And this study actually followed teachers in Georgia to see what learning and teaching in the pandemic was like. And it was an eye-opening experience. This was actually occurred in 2020, the peak of the problem. And they too, like Sevinch said, they had this lockdown period, come back to school, lockdown kind of thing going on. And it was kind of just having the teachers to bend like an elastic band, come teach face-to-face, go home, teach remotely. It was just something else. But in this ethnographic study, what they found was that peer-led teaching and learning, sharing experiences and best practices tend to be productive. So again, this bottom-up approach where we take the consumers of education and let them lead the charge, not in isolation, mind you, you need the other perspectives too. But who best to hear from but the persons who are digesting this information in the classroom, the teachers and the students. At least that's what I think. And of course, Tatya's work has corroborated that. So there's also a rich opportunity here for research. Even this hackathon is a situation where it opens up for research and trying to do things differently, because the pandemic is not gone. I don't know when it's gonna go, but it has offered us a unique opportunity to learn differently and to look at the education system differently. So on that point now, I'll move on to pivot. And what I mean by pivoting here is I believe that we need to move from education or educating to learning. It may seem like I'm speaking about semantics, but I'm not. I think the educational system prior to COVID was more about taking information into the ball and throwing it against the wall and see what sticks. In that, we as teachers may be able to teach things the way we learn, and some students may be able to actually learn the content. But if we focus on the fact that learning is what we really want and not just educating, how can we make sure that the persons who are in front of us as students are learning? And as early as the 19th century, John Dewey actually was proclaiming that we should go into experiential learning and focusing on that. And it has taken some point in some countries, but it's not a wholesale adoption. So even though we may think in some cases, I know in certain contexts in Jamaica where we think that we're learning, we're focusing on student learning, we're really not. We're focusing on setting those MCQ items because we would have had a lecture and just gone through the things. That's not how learning goes on. Learning is a very, as Matthew said, a very unique experience where it's personalized. And it's not an easy thing to personalize teaching and learning, but it's something I believe that we need to do because the COVID-19 situation has offered us a chance to really look at the educational system and change things. Another point I'd like to bring here is, again, this is all about me framing the problem into the crucial context that we're talking about. I know in Jamaica that 1/3 of our population, roughly, gets a chance to pay for university. That means that there's a 2/3 of the population that has to stop at secondary school. We call it high school in Jamaica. And it's not because they're not bright, they are, but the cost to go to university is just staggering. It means, therefore, that 2/3 of the population may not get to go higher. So we need to make sure that at the secondary school, which is the last point you may get some persons, that you have ensured that you are teaching students to be competent, not just educated, but competent in the knowledge. So if you understand what I'm saying, the challenge today, well, for the next couple of days, is creating something that will work for teaching maths and English language. As I forget which speaker it was, forgive me, but somebody was talking about how mathematics learning is different from English. It is so. Therefore, the solutions could never be the same. The amount of phonetic work that's required in the English language is not the same for mathematics. So the solutions, even though they may have similarities, they could never be the same if I'm trying to ensure learning occurs and therefore competency. So in my native background here, the solution, if it were to be applied in Jamaica, for example, or any other third world country, would be allowing us to meet the population, the mass of the population, if they were to stop the end of secondary school. I hope that's clear. And the last thing that I can see readily, but of course it doesn't mean it's the only thing, is, as Savinch had mentioned, there is a cohort of students who are being unwittingly left out. It's the special education students, of course, and there are also students who are just not cognitively inclined in terms of academic excellence, that we have not been meeting typically even before the pandemic. I know the pandemic is here and the remote education puts a distance between us. You can see clearly now those who have other intelligences like kinesthetic knowledge or music knowledge and not necessarily academic, and they're falling by the wayside. In addition to that, as I said, the special needs learners, I know for a fact, I don't have students like that. I've not taught persons like that, but I know if the persons who are not having special needs are not being met, I can almost guarantee the ones that have special needs are not being met. And again, as I said to you earlier, the COVID-19 pandemic has allowed us this grand opportunity, even though it's been a very sad state of affairs, to look at education in a very different way and to coin something that is working, because it's not working anymore. So it's a grand opportunity for us to reshape things and look at things different. So as Professor Bartos said about this going broad, I've put as many things as I can out there in terms of how we have to, the things we have to consider. We're going to go broad and then converge and then go broad again. So again, this is not the sum total, just an idea of a few things that I readily see. So we have goals that are short-term, intermediate, and long-term. I'm not going to tell the persons who are working on the solution how to proceed, but I'll just put a few things in mind here. We're talking about low-tech infrastructure environments. And so in the short term, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have said by 2030, we're supposed to have quality education for all, a grand, lovely goal to be met. But that was before the pandemic. Now the pandemic is here. How realizable is quality education for all in 9 years' time? It's still a very good goal to work towards, but you first have to know the wicked problem and all the parts. This is part of what this challenge is about. And so in the short term, I just like us to remember that this is not a nice challenge, it's a necessary challenge, because we need to have quality education for all. 2030 or not, we need to have it for all. So we have to understand the problem. In terms of intermediate goals that I would see happening, because there's low-tech infrastructure, an ideal situation would be for us to actually retrofit the different environments with more infrastructure. You know, we don't have internet access here, provide that. We don't have devices here, provide that. That sounds like a lofty goal, but that would be something that would happen a little later. And the approach that you take and the solution that you present could consider retrofitting the different places for with more EdTech infrastructure, if your solution requires that. But that's not something that could happen in the short term. The long-term goal, I think, is a big pet peeve of mine. Having been in the environment now for 2 years, being taught remotely and teaching remotely, I see where our curriculum, and I'm speaking generally, of course, I haven't been everywhere, but the curriculum that I've been exposed in the different environments are still based on face-to-face. In that I'm able to throw content at the person and see what they learn by an MCQ, multiple choice item. And what that tests for a secondary school student is how well they can guess, because it's hard to assess online learning with multiple choice questions. And so for a long-term solution, I see in my mind education of the teachers for creating curricula that is for online learning and creating assessments that can actually take up and assess properly online learning. Because again, I believe we have the opportunity to pivot from educating to learning. And the only way to do that is to make sure that your students are competent. So these solutions that we are asking your assistants with need to address competency in mathematics, competency in English language. So for me, those are the things that cover the challenge, and these are some directions you can head. I hope I've covered enough, but again, there's so much more that we can look together when we take on a participatory approach, as Dr. Bartos has referred to. And having said that, I'd like to close. I'd like to thank you for, on behalf of Professor Margos Pedast from the Pedagogicum of University of Tartu, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the EdTech team, on behalf of our speakers from Aalto University and Falling Walls Foundation. We thank you for your audience, your attention, and your efforts. Here are my sources.
Thank you, Primla. Thank you all.
Sure.
Just a quick note that we would continue on the 9th of November. Those who want to collaborate, like to work on the collaborative solution, we invite you to join at 6 p.m. Estonian time, 9th of November. Those who would like to submit their own solutions are free to do that. Feel free to contact us with any questions that you may have after this. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you all. It was my pleasure to see you.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
It was very
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.